Now, we discuss subduction related settings. In these settings, oceanic lithosphere is subducted beneath an arc system on the overriding plate. This is shown in figure 1. The subduction zone is usually marked by a deep sea trench, and between this and the active volcanic arc is the arc trench gap. The arc trench gap in some arcs is composed of an outer arc and a 4 arc basin. The outer arc, which may rise above sea level, is usually built of oceanic floor or trench sediments scraped off the subducting plate above low angle thrusts and tectonically accreted to the overlying plate to form a accretionary plate or tectonic melange. The 4 arc basin contains flat lying undeformed sediments that may reach up to 5 km in thickness and which reflect progressive shallowing as the basin fills up with turbidites, shallow marine sediments and fluviatile deltaic shoreline complexes. The sediments are derived mainly from the volcanic arc or by the erosion of uplifted basement. Arc systems may be either island arcs or continental margin arcs. Island arcs are of several kinds. Number 1, the clearly intracratonic like the Tonga and Scotia. Number 2, separated from the Cyalic continent by small semi-ocean basins like Japan and Kuril. Number 3, pass laterally into continental margin fold belt like the Aleutian. And number 4, built against continental crust like the Sumatra in Java. In continental margin arc, the volcanic arc is situated landward of the oceanic crust continental crust boundary as in the Andes, as shown in figure 1. Behind the volcanic arcs, there is the back arc area usually referred to when behind island arcs as the back arc basin or marginal basin, or when behind continental margin as a foreland basin or morass trough. Example, the Amazon basin behind the Andes. Now, we come to mineralization in the island arcs. It is convenient to divide the mineral deposits in these arcs according to whether they were formed outside the arc trench environment and transported to it by plate motion, that is allothognous deposits, or whether they originated within the arc complex, namely autochthonous deposits. Now, we discuss allothognous deposits. Rocks and mineral deposits formed during the development of oceanic crust may, by various circumstances, arrive at the trench at the top of subduction zone, as shown in figure 2. This material is largely subducted when some of it may be recycled. Some, however, is abducted to form accreted terrain. Examples of what appears to be Cypress type massive sulfide ore bodies thrust into a melange occur in northwestern California, where the Island Mountain deposit and some smaller occurrences are found in the Franciscan melange. Further north in the Klamath Mountains of Oregon, USA, the abducted ophiolite contains the important Turner albite, zinc, copper, silver, gold, cobalt massive sulfide deposit. Cypress type massive sulfide deposits are also likely to be present at the base of island arc sequences. Whether these are the initial succession or a second or later one formed by the migration of Benioff zone is not clear, because in most cases the arc basement will have originated at the oceanic ridge. Clearly, any deposits formed in new oceanic crust may also eventually be mechanically incorporated into the island arcs, and the most likely victims will be the chromite deposits of alpine type peridotites and gabbros. Podiform chromites are the most important magmatic deposits in the allothognous peridotites. The chromatites are cumulates that originated in the upper mantle, often at mid-oceanic ridges. Economic deposits of podiform chromite occur in the present day arcs in Cuba, where they are found in dunite pods surrounded by peridotite. Numerous occurrences are present in ancient island arc successions. Now we come to autochthonous deposits. In considering these deposits, it is convenient to divide the arc development into three stages, namely initial or tholeitic stage, the main calc-alkaline stage, and waning calc-alkaline stage. To discuss the initial or tholeitic stage, the probable hydrous nature of such magmas and their derivation by partial melting of the mantle material implies that cogenetic massive sulfides may well be expected to form during this stage. However, no massive sulfide deposits have yet been detected in the earliest tholeitic sequences of island arcs, but such sequences must be considered as promising for their discovery. Now, the main calc-alkaline stage. This is the main period of arc development. Considerable sedimentation and subaerial volcanicity may have occurred during the tholeitic stage, but the main arc building and plutonic igneous activity belong to this stage. The early stage of island arc volcanism is dominated by basalt and basaltic andesite. The more evolved arcs have andesite as the dominant volcanic rock. The early tholeitic stage is succeeded by magmas having a calc-alkaline trend and which are probably ultimately derived from two sources, namely subducted oceanic crust and partial melting of the mantle wedge overlying the Benioff zone. This will result in the diaperic uprise of wet pyroxenite from just above the Benioff zone. The pyroxenite will undergo partial melting as it rises, and the magma so produced will fractionate as they rise to produce a wide range of magmas possessing calc-alkaline characteristics. The exposure of much more rock to subaerial erosion will greatly increase the volume of sediment that reaches inter-island gaps, the arch trench gap and the back arc area. Reef limestones will then be common. Rapid erosion on the flanks of subaerial volcanoes, ignimbritic activity related to increase in silica content of magmas, giving rise to submarine lahars, submarine slumping and so on, would all contribute to produce a vast volume of material for local sedimentation and for transportation by turbidity currents to the arch trench gap, along submarine canyons to the trench itself and in the reverse into the back arc regions. Volcanic massive sulfide, stockwork, skarn and vein deposits are formed in this stage. Conformable sulfide ore bodies of Beshi type develop at this stage in back arc basins, accompanying the andesitic to dacitic volcanism. They also occur in complex structural settings characterized by thick Gray-Wacke sequences. The associated turbidites may be of arc or continental derivation as indicated in figure 3. The lack of ophiolitic components, the petrological association and the pyroclastic nature of volcanics indicates a different environment from that of the Cyprus type deposits. Sillitoe suggested that the solutions which deposited some of these massive sulfide deposits might have come directly from subducted sulfide bodies as shown in figure 2, with their metals being derived from the subducted bodies and layers 1 and 2 of the subducted ocean floor. Metal bearing brines expelled from layers 1 and 2 would induce fusion in the wedge of the mantle above the Benioff zone, ascending with the resulting hydrous calc-alkaline magmas to form porphyry copper deposits when the volcanism is dominantly subaerial. Many porphyry copper are present in island arcs as shown in figure 4, with both diorite and Lovell-Gilbert model types being present. There is no evidence that continental crust is required for their formation. Therefore, they can be sought for in any island arc with or without continental crust. The young age of the ore bodies in some recent arcs indicate that they belong to the late stage of island arc evolution and perhaps overlap into the waning stage. The ultimate source of the metal in porphyry deposits is to be sought in subduction zones. It can account for the regional differences seen in these deposits, relating them to the differences in the content of copper, molybdenum and gold in the subducted oceanic crust. Skarn deposits are common at igneous carbonate country rock contacts in the older and more complex arcs such as those in Indonesia, the Philippines and Japan. Many of the granites and granodiorites with which these deposits are associated also possess spatially related pegmatitic and vein mineralization, and the resulting metallic association can be quite complex, as in the Kitakami and Abukama highlands of Japan. Skarn and vein deposits of tin are well known from parts of the Indonesian arc. Less well known are the gold veins in the contact zones of diorites and granodiorites of the Solomon Islands. Other vein deposits are not common in the younger arcs, including those of mercury, which is surprising in view of their development in association with andesites in the alpine orogenic belt. Example, the Eastern Carpathians. Cinnabar veins occur in the more complex arcs of the Philippines, Japan and New Zealand. Now we come to the waning calc-alkaline stage. The massive sulfide deposits of Kuroko type probably belong to the later stages of development of island arcs. They are associated with the more felsic stages of calc-alkaline magmatism and are marked by distinctive features. Kuroko type massive sulfide ores in ancient island arcs include the Paleozoic deposits of Captain's Flat, New South Wales, Buchan's, Newfoundland, Paris Mountains, Wales and Avoco in Ireland. The present opinion is that these deposits too are wholly or mainly developed in back arc settings, and Liat et al. Pointed out that an extensional settings favor the development of long lived rhyolitic high level magma chambers, often with bimodal basalt rhyolite volcanic associations like those of the North Wales, with which the Kuroko type deposits are frequently associated. The Kuroko type deposits of Japan have formed in a weakly extensional environment at the waning stage of the opening of the Sea of Japan about 15.3 million years ago. Manganese deposits of volcanic affiliation are very common in eugeosynclinal succession of all ages from Archean to recent, and island arcs are no exception. Large numbers of subeconomic deposits occur in the tertiary volcanic areas of Japan, Indonesia and the West Indies, and the recent volcanic sequences of the larger Southwest Pacific islands. These deposits have formed in situ and are not tectonic slices of pelagic manganese deposits of the oceanic crust. They belong to the waning calc-alkaline stage and the preceding stage of island arc evolution. A well documented manganese deposit belonging to the above occurrences is that of the southern Urals in Russia. Ore layers are composed of braunite, and these layers alternate with cherty jasperoid layers. Vorontsov and Rachmaninoff attribute a volcanic exhalative origin for the manganese ores of Kusimofo deposit. Coley and Walsh have described typical deposits of this type in Fiji. The nature of back arc basins and volcanic contents are variable. There is a scarcity of observed mineralization in the modern back arc basins, partly because of the thick blanket sediment and the volcanic ash present in most of them. According to various workers, Beshi type sulfide ores form in back arc environment, and a number of ophiolites with their associated sulfide and chromite deposits have been assigned to this setting. The Taupo volcanic zone of North Island, New Zealand demonstrates that the volcanic exhalative mineralizing processes can take place in marginal basins. A similar but older Welsh basin in UK has Kuroko style and copper lead zinc vein mineralization in addition to sedimentary and volcanic manganese deposits. Now, we discuss the mineralization in continental margins. The principal features of continental margin arcs, also referred to in literature inappropriately as Andean or Cordilleran arcs, include a trench with turbidites, high heat flow and regularly arranged metamorphic zones, as well as monazite, granodiorite plutons and batholiths. Foreland basins that are often molasse filled, and widespread sulfide and oxide mineralization, including the extensive development of porphyry, copper and molybdenum deposits. Active volcanoes are frequently present in mountain chains underlain by a crust of greater than normal thickness due to either crustal shortening or underplating. Although these are regions of plate convergence with its concomitant compression, many graben structures are developed running parallel to or obliquely to the arcs. Some magmatic activity and mineralization are related to this rifting. The Andean arcs lie along the western margin of South America, where it abuts against the Nazca plate, which is moving down a Benioff zone beneath the present mountain chain, as shown in figure 4. This chain is immensely rich in ore bodies of various types and metals, but generally shows a plutonic epigenetic affiliation rather than a volcanic syngenetic one. This is no doubt to some extent a function of erosion. The profusion of metals may be related to proximity to the East Pacific rise and the abundance of metals that are being added to the oceanic crust at this spreading axis. The Andean Cordilleran deposits possessed a close relationship in time and space with calcalkaline intrusives emplaced at relatively shallow levels in the upper crust. The Andes are characterized by linear belts of mineralization that coincide with the morphotectonic belts which run down the mountain chain. The coastal belt, mainly consisting of Precambrian metamorphic rocks, is important for its iron apatite deposits of skarn and other types. The Western Cordillera is a copper province particularly important for porphyry type deposits carrying copper, molybdenum and gold mineralization, as shown in figure 5. A belt with Paleozoic sedimentary rocks along eastern Cordillera contains tin together with tungsten, silver, bismuth mineralization. Example, the Bolivian belt as shown in figure 6. This tin silver belt of South Oruro has produced vast amounts of silver from Spanish colonial times to the present day, and indeed the Eastern Pacific continental margin arcs from British Columbia to Chile are well endowed with large silver deposits, but the Western Pacific arcs have virtually none. The development of silver deposits is controlled by the relative abundance of silver in the subducted oceanic crust. The Western Cordillera of the Andes consists of several gold deposits. The overall metal zonation of the Andes has been related to the remobilization of metals subducted in the oceanic crust at different depths down the Benioff zone, to migration of Benioff zones and to changes in their inclination. The porphyry deposits are related to I-type granitoids probably generated along the Benioff zone or in the mantle wedge above it, but the tin deposits are related to S-type granitoids, perhaps representing anatactic melts that derive their tin from continental crust. Similar situations occur in Alaska and China, with tin mineralization related to deeper sections of the Benioff zone than the porphyry copper mineralization. Now, we discuss the strike slip settings. Two different types of faults are included here, namely the transform fault and the long known tear or wrench fault. Strike slip faults vary in size from plate boundary faults such as the San Andreas fault of California and the Alpine fault of New Zealand through microplate boundaries and intraplate faults such as those of Asia north of the Himalayas down to small scale faults with only a few meters offset. Even if these structures occur as single faults or as fault zones, they may be important in locating economic mineral deposits. Well recognized transform faults in continental crust have little or no associated mineralization. Transform faults are, however, loci of higher heat flow and could well be the channel ways for hydrothermal solutions, as certainly appears to be the case in the Red Sea. Here, the brine pools and metal rich muds appear to be located above transform faults. Donnybrook Bridgetown shear zone of Western Australia, which is considered to be analogous to the San Andreas fault system, hosts the Greenbushes pegmatite zone, which is potentially the largest rare metal resource in the world. Modern strike slip basins occur in oceanic, continental and continental margin settings. They may also occur in back arc basins. The classical onshore strike slip basin is the Dead Sea with its important salt production, and the best known offshore basins are those of Californian continental borderland, some of which host commercial oil pools. Ancient strike slip basins are difficult to identify. However, two examples of economic importance are the tertiary Bowie Basin of England with its economic deposits of sedimentary kaolin and minor lignite, and the late Mesozoic coal bearing lacustrine basins of northeastern China. A similar structural relationship was noted by Groves and Foster in the Yilgarn block of Western Australia, where major Archean gold deposits are commonly adjacent to the transcurrent shear zones and on the district scale are usually present in geometrically related shorter strike length smaller scale structures. Henley and Adams studied the giant placer gold deposits and their tectonic settings. They showed that majority of the giant gold placer deposits are situated in the Pacific margins where they formed during the tertiary in similar tectonic and sedimentary environments. The plate boundaries involved are both convergent and regional strike slip faults such as the Alpine fault in New Zealand and the San Andreas fault of California, as shown in figure 7. Two factors of regional evolution were important in the development of each of the continental placers. First, there was the rejuvenation of an older orogenic belt containing significant quantities of bedrock gold to provide a source, and second, continual high rates of uplift of this belt resulting in multiple episodes of sediment reworking and the development of large concentrations of placer gold deposits. Fundamental faults and lineaments often have ore bodies and even ore fields spatially related to them. Hale drew attention to the 38 parallel lineament of the central USA and its relationship to a number of ore fields in the Mississippi Valley and elsewhere, as shown in figure 8. This lineament is a zone marked by wrench faults, lines of alkalic, gabbroic, ultramafic and kimberlitic intrusions, suggesting connections into the mantle and changes in the stratigraphy across it. Important ore fields occur at the intersections of this lineament and structures. For example, the central Kentucky ore field occurs where the West Hickman fault zone and the Cincinnati arch crosses it, and the very important southeast Missouri field where it is crossed by St. Genevieve fault system and the Ozark Dome. Gold deposits in Archean Abitibi greenstone of Ontario, Quebec in Canada exhibit close connections with regional fault zones. Antimony gold mines of the Archean Murchison schist belt at the Kapwal Craton in South Africa lie along the 35 to 40 kilometer antimony line, which is considered a zone of shearing hosting most of the mineralization. The largest deposits of the Stuart Shelf Adelaide geosynclinal region of South Australia lie on the two alignments as shown in figure 9. The giant among these deposits, the Olympic Dam, is close to the intersection of two lineaments and a sinistral flexure. This is exhibited in figure 10. Now, we discuss the collision related settings. Continental collision results from the closing of an oceanic or marginal basin whose previous existence is revealed by the presence of lines of abducted ophiolites. In some orogens interpreted as collision belts such as the Damarides of South Africa, this evidence is missing. Collision can occur between two active arc systems, between an arc and an oceanic island chain, or between an arc and a microcontinent. But the most extreme tectonic effects are produced when a continent on the subducting plate meets either a continental margin or an island arc on the overriding plate. Subduction can then lead to melting in the heated continental slab and the production of S-type granites. This is demonstrated in figure 11. In many continental collision belts, highly differentiated granites of this suite are accompanied by tin and tungsten deposits of Greason and vein type hercynites of Europe, like the Cornwall in UK, Erzgebirge in Germany. With the continental collision of the type illustrated in figure 11, belts of older I-type granitoids, possibly with associated porphyry type copper and molybdenum deposits, are related to the subduction of oceanic lithosphere, and belts of younger S-type granitoids, which may have associated tin and tungsten mineralization formed during the continental collision. In Southeastern Asia, as shown in figure 12, there are three different granite provinces that run parallel to each other. The Eastern Granite Province contains hornblende biotite and biotite granites of Permian age. They are I-type granites, which are relative to the main range granites of Central Province, poor in tin, and the ratio of historic tin output of Central Province to Eastern Province granite in Malaysia is 19:1. Further north in this province in Thailand, there is a well developed Permian volcanic plutonic arc with a porphyry copper deposit at Loei. The Central Province hosts the main range granites of Malaysia. These are post-tectonic periluminous S-type biotite granites whose ages lie in the range of 220 to 200 million years. The famous Malaysian tin fields of the Kinta Valley and Kuala Lumpur occur in this province, but the same province in central and northern Thailand is much well endowed with tin. The western province is restricted to the western Thailand and Burma and carries granite intrusions of Cretaceous to Tertiary age. The older granites are largely I-type granites and the younger granites are S-type. In the latter, tin has been worked for over a century or so at Khao Dane, Phuket and Samong. The geological, geochronological and geochemical data of tin bearing granites can be explained by postulating the successive collisions of three microcontinental plates as shown in figure 13. In this reconstruction, it is postulated that in the Permian, an ocean or more probably a marginal basin occupied the area of the present central Thailand, and eastward subduction of oceanic crust and gave rise to the development of the Permian volcanic plutonic eastern province with its porphyry type mineralization. This is shown in figure 13a. This marginal basin closed in the Triassic with a continental collision that resulted in the genesis of S-type tin granites of the central province, which is demonstrated in figure 13b. Following this collision, the marginal basin to the west was gradually closed and again by eastward subduction of oceanic crust gave rise to I-type granite emplacement in western Thailand about 100 million years ago and produced a phase of S-type granite formation. But in this event, considerable overlap of I and S-type granite resulted, as in the Phuket Island, perhaps as a result of more pronounced subduction of the leading edge of the Burma plate. This is shown in figure 13c. Finally, it may be remarked that the belts of I-type granites and S-type tin granites, similar to those in Malaysia, appear to be present in the Hersenites of Europe. Uranium deposits, particularly vein type, may be associated with S-type granites as in the Hersenites, as shown in figure 14, and damerites. Unfortunately, not all S-type granites have associated mineralization. For example, those found in a belt stretching from Idaho to Baja in California. Sawkins has suggested that the reason that some have associated tin mineralization, some uranium and others neither, presumably reflects the geochemistry of the protolith from which these granites were derived and their subsequent magmatic history.